one positive piece out of that is some of our coach tours, which have dropped off a bit in the last few years due to the cruise market, due to the fact that travellers of that looking for that style of travel have picked cruise over coach. They are considering coming back to Napier, and that is more about the fact we've got some good new hotel infrastructure, the museum's obviously coming on stream, and they're seeing Napier back on track. So there were at least 2 or 3 companies who were seriously looking at bringing their coach series back, which is fantastic news. The conference planner, and I'll show you, we've got some copies, but this is a greatly improved version of what we had before. Great support from the industry, and this is our sort of pitch bible for pitching conferences, events, and weddings as well, and it gives a great sort of overview of all the facilities in the region, accommodation, venues, etc. So I'll leave you all some copies of those, but we've done a, oh yep, yes it is. So this is, we print about 1,500, and we've just sent 400 out to various conference organisers around the country, and obviously it's a very big piece that we use to promote Hawke's Bay at the various shows we go to, like Trends and Meetings, which is coming up in June. And as George mentioned, we every day strive to cut costs, and we've managed to do that even in the last quarter, which is good. So that's just the planner. Just on the Big Easy. This event was a great collaboration with Regional Council, Napier Hastings Councils and Sport Hawke's Bay and ourselves, and I guess we were pretty overwhelmed by the response we got to it. We had a very short window to market it, approximately a month, and we had about 550 odd register prior, and then we had an additional 200 or 300 turn up on the day at Church Road where it started. And you know, this is a long-term event. One of the interesting things that 58% of people were 45 to 65, which just shows you that there is a huge gap in the market for events serving a slightly older visitor who's not really interested in some sort of endurance race, but they want to be part of an event. It kind of hit all the right notes. It started well, and there were lots of fantastic things to do along the way, and you know, those operators who got in behind it, I think, did pretty well. I think West Shore Beach Inn's here, and they certainly did well out of having Big Easy ride past their door. From the numbers from out of town, we're estimating between 15 and 20%. We know that because everyone registered and they told us where they're from, but a lot of people obviously on the day hired bikes who were visiting, and so that was a nice thing to see. 80% said they're going to return in 2014, which is a pretty good endorsement of the event, and 74% said they're extremely likely to recommend it to their friends. So I think we want to own Easter as another event period for Hawke's Bay. It's obviously the last of the big holidays before winter, and yeah, as I say, and the concert at the end obviously just added that sort of something at the end that they had to look forward to. So thank you for your support. Some of you were on the ride, Councillor McGregor, and so it was nice to see you there, and hopefully next year we'll have a few more partaking. So just in terms of what we've coming up, obviously Winter Fork, George mentioned, ticket sales are booming along for that, and we've sold out 6 events, and 7 more are very close to selling out. There's 29 all up. That's June 20 to 23. Our advertising around the boomer market continues, and so that's ongoing, and obviously at the moment we're also pushing our video content online, which is working incredibly well. We conducted an industry survey late February, March, and we're just in the midst of collating those results, and that will tell us, I guess it'll give us a better understanding of who is in our industry, the makeup of it, and we've also asked our industry, you know, how well equipped they are to deal with things like changing technology, and you know, how they're currently marketing themselves and how they're spending their dollars. So that'll hopefully provide us with some information to sort of help with the capability for some operators. 3 huge groups of travel agents arrive in Hawke's Bay next week. from the US, UK and Australia. They're called mega FAMs. There's 150 to 180 agents roaming the country, and we've managed to get 3 of the groups into Hawke's Bay, which is fantastic. So that's a pretty big one, sponsored by Emirates Air New Zealand and Tourism New Zealand. We have another big show that we attend in Auckland at the end of May, where we have about, I think, 12 Hawke's Bay operators who are coming along with us. And that's really about putting them in front of frontline agents, retail sellers, product managers and inbound operators. So it's an important first step for those who are looking at getting into the international markets. And again, that'll obviously will be branded under Hawke's Bay. Talked about Winter Fork and meetings, which now that we have a much more professional and slick planner, we've also got a new regional events manager / conference manager. We're taking a much stronger focus around the meetings market and conference market to fill venues and obviously beds. So that's a big push for us, and that conference is kind of the annual do. So just a little bit on that's Winter Fork. And then just to touch on commercial accommodation, and this is really in relation to the report that I've sent through as a separate paper. Yes, commercial accommodation is in decline, but I think there's a number of reasons why we've seen that. And I think it would be naive to think that tourism and visitors don't change how they want to consume tourism products, and that's exactly what's happened in Hawke's Bay. From work that Sean Bevan's done from Economic Solutions, he accounts for the fact that commercial accommodation in Hawke's Bay is only less than 40% of all nights spent in Hawke's Bay. And I think what's happening is the measures that we've traditionally used are no longer robust enough to give us the true visitor footprint of where we're headed. When we look at some of the other examples of where people are staying and the numbers that we're getting, they're pretty extreme. And the B&B sector for one, I mean, we had some anecdotal commentary in from 5 B&B operators who between them have done 3,000 nights in the last 12 months, and that's not captured anywhere. Black Barn, who is officially a holiday home, do over 30 to 35,000 visitors a year. They're not captured anywhere. So I think we have to take a much more holistic view about how we're measuring our visitor footprint, hence the reason why our spend figures need to become far more important in terms of how we measure success within the region. And obviously there are a number of external factors that have, contributed perhaps to the decline. We have since late 2008 sat in a pretty depressed economic climate. We've also had some major infrastructure changes in Hawke's Bay with Marineland closure, the museum being closed for refurbishment, and obviously I don't think the Manawatu Gorge helped much either. And you can see from this graph how things have tracked over time. So early 2000 was the kick-off of Wine Country, Hawke's Bay Wine Country promotion, and we had a great period of steady growth. But around that 2008 mark, things obviously started to dip off. A slight blip, the Rugby World Cup in 2011, and then obviously 2012, we didn't have a great year from a commercial bed nights point of view. Another quite large factor that I don't think we can ignore is cruise travel. So as you can see from the graph on the left, this is the growth of cruise since 2006, 2007. These are the types of visitors who probably once, if they were coming on a coach, on a structured holiday around New Zealand. Cruise lines are masters of marketing. They have seriously changed the nature of tourism globally. They're on an incredible growth path, and just the figures alone for our coming season 2013-14, we're going to have growth of 15% in passenger numbers. So from 94,000, I think it is, up to 109,000 visitors coming through Hawke's Bay and through the Port of Napier this coming cruise season. So this isn't changing. Ships are getting bigger, and cruise lines, their philosophy is they sell to fill. And so there's very few times that a cruise ship would come empty. They discount to get people on the ships to spend on food and beverage, etc. So that isn't going to change. So what we need to be doing is extracting more from them when they're on the ground, making sure that they're doing more activities while they're here, and trying to entice them that perhaps coming back for a FIT or an independent holiday is the way to go. And it's nice to hear that some of the operators that we talk to are actually starting to see in small numbers that they've had visitors come through who've been to New Zealand on a cruise. So small numbers, but it is happening. The graph on the right-hand side just shows you or compares the growth from decline in commercial nights versus the cruise growth. So you can see there is a pretty close correlation. I was asked to look at Hastings and Napier, and you can see there that we've got the Napier nights are up the top and Hastings are down the bottom. Hastings numbers are a little lower, and but again they've actually probably been slightly more stable through this sort of 2008 period, whereas Napier has dipped off slightly. And I guess Napier probably has a makeup of slightly more corporate and leisure travellers, which have been most affected by the global financial crisis, so it would make sense. I mean, the big question really is, can we reverse the trend? And I think that's going to be tough. We're not alone. Most regions in New Zealand are facing. I was facing the same issue. I was with Taupo yesterday, and they're seeing exactly the same scenario there, with holiday houses and homes becoming a very popular way for people to access those destinations. And it is opportunistic. People are putting their houses online, and they can do it far more easily than they ever could before. They can have a Google reference and a TripAdvisor reference and all the rest of it, plus reviews, and within about 2 minutes and be on about 20 different sites. So the choice for consumers is far greater and all enabled by the internet, and that isn't going to change. So rather than sort of saying, well, how are we going to change it, we either lift demand for Hawke's Bay, a rising tide lifts all boats, but on our current budgets, etc., we do what we can with what we've got. But there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. There's no silver bullet to tourism marketing. Every region and destination is different in size, type and structure, and we all face very different challenges. At the end of the day, our consumers dictate where they travel, and we've got to make sure that we are adaptable, that we have new products, that we have reasons to get visitors to Hawke's Bay and experiences that they choose to seek. And one example of this is the cycle trails, and the reaction that we've had to them from both visitors that have been here over the summer and our international sellers is extraordinary. The trails have been around for a while, but not marketed to the extent that they have been in the last 2 years, and not completed to the level that they have been in the last 2 years. And it's a product that really appeals. Cycling has become kind of the new trendy golf, I don't know, but it really has taken off, and as people get older and our boomer market are pretty fit and want some sort of soft adventure, we do fit into that camp very well. Our visitors changed, and we've got to change the way we measure their footprint, and that's pretty much what I'd like to finish with, is that our measures have to move on, as our consumers have as well. So we are endeavouring to do what we can to help those in the industry that need help, but we've also got to adapt and recognise where we need to make some changes, and to be honest, we need to be looking 10 years out in terms of what our visitors are looking for, not looking in the past.
Thanks, Annie. Just to wrap up, but just before I do, on the commercial accommodation side, I think to give you a sense of how the environment's changing, and as Annie said, the internet and cruise are completely changing the landscape. But I kind of like to think of it this way, that in the last season, on 62 occasions in Napier, 2 4-star hotels turned up on your doorstep and stayed the night and then left. And that's what they are. They're hotels that are simply arriving in port. Now, historically, those people would have stayed here, but they don't. They travel via boat, and they do that because it's incredibly convenient and they don't have to unpack, and for all those reasons. And as you know, anyone that's been cruising, and I haven't, never appeals to me, but anybody that goes is absolutely captured by it. So it's a growth area. And so if you add your 90,000 sort of visitors that come on that thing, you find that, yeah, your commercial accommodation's growing. It's just growing in a portable way. And we just have to recognise that those sea changes are happening and will continue to happen. I don't think that's spelling a long-term problem for commercial accommodation, but it does say that we need to be focused on very strong marketing and what are we offering the public in that environment that they want. And clearly there are times when people are now saying, I'd rather have a holiday home than commercial accommodation. We've got to think about that and say, well, why is that? And not simply say, oh, we've got to force them in one way, because we never will. People will make their own choices, and that's becoming increasingly evident. So, just add to that, you're going to get even more of those one-night hotels coming into town, and it's good news in a sense, because Napier's getting a higher slice of that market, and it's a very good port in the cruise scheme of things. Just perhaps, the strategic picture. This is, we shared this with you right at the start, and I just wanted to come back to it and say that this is still the platform that we operate on as a team at Hawke's Bay Tourism, and that is we have a mission which is to get visitors here now, to get them doing more whilst they're here, and also getting them to come back. And on the right-hand side there, we talked to you that our vision was that Hawke's Bay, the tourism in Hawke's Bay is seen as being a vibrant but also valued contributor to the local economy. And our own values, well, let's get on with it. And that's something that's been very evident in what I've seen the team do, is they have basically got on with it and done some amazing things that are going to continue to contribute strongly to that economic picture. But we have just recently sat down and said, well, okay, let's have a look out over the next 2 to 3 years, and what will be the main issues that we need to be conscious of as a team, and what we need to keep in our picture and start planning for. In the marketing and communications area, well, we've probably done all the foundation work there in terms of the brand. We understand that the advertising and PR impact we can have. The travel distribution section is now is much more connected to us, and probably the piece we feel we can add to that is some research on who what the style and what's going to be the look of the future visitor, and I'll talk a bit more about that next, because looking at the markets that we need to be conscious of as a region, clearly the domestic market is going to remain our biggest source of visitors and our main focus. Australia second, but very close third, and something that we've identified as an issue that we're now going to spend more time and effort considering, and that is China. China has now become the second largest international market coming into New Zealand. As you know, it's now our largest trading partner. I have no doubt that China will become a bigger feature of our landscape more quickly than we expect, particularly in the visitor market. We are not going to get Chinese bus tours here, but there is an emerging Chinese independent touring market, and Hawke's Bay has an opportunity to tap into that. So I'm really signalling that you'll see more emphasis and work on our part in assessing how the China market can be tapped in effectively for this region. There are some suggestions that China will overtake Australia as an international market. Australia, we have over 1 million visitors a year. China currently 200,000. I used to discount that, but I'd have to say that I don't think I do anymore, with what we've seen recently. All indications are that market's going to continue to grow and become an incredibly important part of our landscape. So we have to be ready for that. We have to think of how we want to present this region and what are the elements we've got that Chinese visitors will want. Include other Asia in that as well, because clearly the whole region is strong, and there are other parts that we know that we need to pay attention to. Then the fourth part will be Western markets. Annie showed you that there's still there's been a decline in that. It's sort of held up a wee bit in the US at the moment, but there is a sea change going on, and we have to be part of that. Looking at the products and promotion, we've talked our events and conferences, cycle trails, weddings and cruise. They're the sort of product areas that we'll be focusing on. Servicing the visitor, the technology is becoming, in any business, is becoming incredibly important. But what is happening here is that people are using technology as an alternative to eyesights and to other forms of information, And over the next few years, particularly in this period, I think we'll have to think very hard about what sort of mobile provisions we provide as a region for people who want to access information in the region. So how people use technology when they come into this region will be important to us, and we need to be focused on that and have a plan. Just covered off social media, and obviously industry capability has come up